Hello, I'm Bob the Booker and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about something a little bit different. Firstly, not a Booker Prize book, way, and secondly, a book that is really quite far outside of my typical kind of reading experience. It's a young adult novel, and I haven't read that many young adult novels at all. Even when I was a young adult, I don't think I read that many young adult novels, partly because I don't think I was reading much at that time. But I think when I was reading at that time, I don't know, I think I read a bit of a weird mix then. Anyway, all of that aside, I read this book, Hot Pterodactyl Boyfriend by Alan Cumyn. Now, part of my thinking for reading this book, and Lord knows why I did it, was I watched the video by Read with Cindy, who is hilarious and you should all check out. But her video in particular, I adored. It was a side-by-side literary comparison and criticism of Hot Pterodactyl Boyfriend by Alan Cumyn and Becoming by Michelle Obama. And she draws out these really funny, silly comparisons between the two. And I mean, it's so expertly done. It's a video I wish I'd made. I like, props to her, it's hilarious. However, I approached this book without checking Goodreads or checking anybody else's responses to the book individually outside of mocking it and sort of joking about it. What I hadn't realized was that this book is garbage. And I don't know, maybe that's harsh, but obviously it's such a silly premise, such a fun, silly idea, and it's so absurd. And I didn't really read the fact that many people had tried reading it on that assumption and really not enjoyed it. And I was the kind of thinking along the lines of, I adore things that are so bad that they're good, right? I love Carry On films, even though watching them with sort of a modern lens, they're a lot more problematic than I remembered them being as a kid. But anyway, that aside, we've also got things like My Dad Wrote a Porno, which is absolutely hilarious. One of my favorite podcasts of all time. It's where this man in real life found that his dad had been writing erotica, the Belinda Blinked series, and they are so but the whole joy is listening as Jamie and his two friends completely cackle and fall about themselves reading this book and mercilessly mocking how badly written it is. These really bizarre, ambitious sex scenes, descriptions. The one that always sticks in my mind being things like her nipples were like the 10-centimeter rivets used on the Titanic, which is not only so unsexy and bizarre as an image, it's also so incredibly specific and niche, and also so unnecessary, right? And if I said, he's as tall as a 2-meter sign, I could just say he's 2 meters tall, or he's as tall as this sign. Saying he's as tall as a 2-meter sign seems bizarre. Like you're using a simile, but then also telling someone the exact measurement of how tall something is. Anyway, so I love silly things like this, and it's all fun and great, and I love things that are so bad that they're good. A film I absolutely adore is The Room with Tommy Wiseau, which is so bad, so bad, and I love nothing else than watching it and like quoting it as it goes along and absolutely mocking the fact this film makes no sense, is terribly filmed and directed and acted and written and everything like that. What I'm getting at is there's real joy to be found in absolutely savagely tearing something apart that is really bad, but with an acknowledgement that it's so bad that it is good. Now, for me, where Hot Pterodactyl Boyfriend fits into this. So I have feelings about this. So Hot Pterodactyl Boyfriend, as the name suggests, is this book all about a pterodactyl who sort of starts at this high school. He is the only pterodactyl there. That's perhaps not to be, that is not something not that surprising, given that, they're extinct, and that he's going to a human school. And, you know, as most schools have a lot of humans, that's kind of their thing. And so the whole idea is that he kind of starts this school, you know, traditional ideas of kind of stories of being young, you know, like teenage life, school life kind of stories are often, you know, how hard it is to fit in, how hard it is to really understand who you are, like changes with kind of going through puberty, all of these kinds of things, all of the difficulties of what it's like to be a teenager. And obviously add on top of that being a pterodactyl and being an entirely different species. So anyway, this pterodactyl arrives and we're all meant to kind of think, wow, you know, isn't life hard for him? And, you know, characters stick up for him and they're like, hey, look, if you discriminate against him, this is speciesism. Like, we need to be looking after him. He has done nothing wrong. He's just started here. Anyway, ignoring the bizarre premise of that, or whatever, it's, you know, it's so silly and it's so fun. And I think I was so ready for this to be a book that I was going to love for being so bad. And I, particularly at the beginning of the book, it feels like the author is very aware of how silly this idea is. You know, the author is not kind of going into this blind being like, wow, I just think pterodactyls and humans can really get along. The author knows that this is silly and ridiculous. And there are loads of kind of fun comments sort of littered throughout, particularly in the early parts where you're like, okay, the author knows what they're doing here. Now, expecting that this book would be so bad that it's good and that I would really enjoy it, I purposely saved it to be my first book of 2021, thinking it would be a really fun, silly way to start off the year, particularly after 2020. And in typical 2021 fashion, it was something that seemed so promising and then immediately let you down. It was so bad. And I feel bad really laying into this book in some ways, but I'm still going to do it because for me, I just felt like it was such a missed opportunity. Now, this book, as I said, starts with such a silly premise. You know, this pterodactyl has started in school. So many characters seem to immediately fall in love with him. Although he faces these kind of pressures of people not wanting to be around him because he's a pterodactyl, and society saying that he might be dangerous because he's a pterodactyl, he also somehow kind of muddles through and people really like him. He at one point becomes the lead singer of a band, partly because his sort of primordial scream and these kind of harsh sounds that come out of his mouth apparently, you know, lend really well to being in like a rock band in this world. Whatever, I was willing to let that slide. I thought this is really funny, really silly, cool, let's go. Then it just carries on for another 300 pages and I have so many issues with it. So, you know, he accidentally breaks someone's arm and, you know, that feels like a really good setup for a story about everyone kind of ganging up on him and saying, oh, you know, he's a danger to our kids, like, won't somebody think of the children? And then it just goes on for 300 pages and then somehow none of these characters make it. Sorry, I get angry about this. We were rooting for you, we were all rooting for you. So characters start making decisions that make zero sense, and as much as I was willing to overlook it, thinking, you know, it's sort of portrayed as teenagers going through a very tough time in their life, plus the bizarre situation of this pterodactyl being there, it just plods after that. And I kind of partly felt like if this had been a novella, or like a slightly extended short story, I would have probably really loved this and raved about this, just because it's such a silly, stupid idea, and it kind of very much feels like someone has written it while supremely high and it's just come up with this idea and be like, guys, I've got this great idea. There's going to be a school, right? And then you're going to have a pterodactyl. And like, it feels like it should make sense, but it just plods from there on. And I think what makes me so angry about this book is just that missed opportunity, that you've got a book that could have just been this really funny, silly tale that really explores some silly things and kind of goes for it and is absurd. But none of the characters are that exciting. I didn't want any of them to succeed. I hated all of them. They're all really two-dimensional. I don't get how in 400 pages I literally have learned nothing about these characters, and they've shown zero growth. The main character is the closest person who's shown to having any kind of emotional growth throughout, and even then she's bloody boring at the end. There's this whole thing where the pterodactyl at the end flies her off to her world, and I was thinking, okay, great, maybe this can salvage it, where right at the end she's the only human in a pterodactyl world, and therefore, you know, it's kind of a complete inversion of everything that we've had throughout the rest of the story. But no, she just holds on for dear life while he's flying her for what feels like bloody ages. Like, I swear, like 200 pages went by of her just flying. It wasn't that long, it's probably like 10 or 20, but it really dragged. And although there's the attention to detail that her fingers are getting really cold and she can't hold on because they're flying at such high altitudes, part of me was like, this still doesn't really make any sense. They get to this bloody pterodactyl world, and then what happens? Nothing. Just, she's there, and then just, I don't know. I got so angry at this stage, and I'd already kind of started getting to a stage where I wanted each page and each chapter to just end, just because nothing was happening. Nothing was exciting me anymore. I didn't like any of the characters by this stage. I just wanted it to be over. And yet there I was, probably, or also part of the reason I probably disliked it so much is that I felt like the biggest fool for being the one reading it. Because there was me trying to read 400 pages of what is often garbage as the first book of my year. And I was like, I'm a fool. I'm an idiot, and I have played myself by reading this. I should have looked at everybody's Goodreads reviews on it, where everyone was like, no, mama, this is garbage. Like, just no. And I should have listened, but I did not. And so ultimately, who was the bigger fool here? You know, Alan Cumyn for writing a book, or me for borrowing it from my library and then spending hours of my life that I will never get back, not only reading it, but now talking about it on camera. I don't know. Can anybody out there recommend any other books that are so bad or absurd that they're good? Or any other things that are similar? Because that's something I enjoy. I enjoy things being that terrible that they're good. And I enjoy being able to be fairly savage with sort of taking apart parts of these things, but enjoying the process of it. You know, I enjoy silly, camp, frivolous things, and that's basically my life. But then this is what's so, I think this is why I reacted so harshly to this, is I was so ready to love this and to rave about it and to be talking about how funny it was. You know, there's this story and oh my gosh, you've got to read it. There's a pterodactyl, and then like people have sex with it or have some kind of contact, and then their noses go purple, and there's a rock band fronted by this pterodactyl who also at one point breaks someone's arm when they're trying to teach it football. All of these as like separate vignettes and ideas should work, and they kind of did in that exact moment, but then everything around it was so flat and I hated it, and it really made me annoyed. And I am so angry with myself. So ultimately, I am an idiot, and I have been hoodwinked by this. And so I like to think that this is a public service announcement where I am reading this book so that you do not have to. But I am also fully aware that there may be people out there who absolutely loved it, and I can see how, like, once you're sold on the idea of it, like if you just ease into it as a book, I'm sure it's perfectly enjoyable. But for me, I just found so much of it so like, felt so much like it was written in a drug haze, but in a way that was so like, yeah, like not there. Like, if you're going to have an absurd, stupid idea, have the chops around it, like have everything, all the structure around it to hold that silly idea in place and exploit that silly idea for all of the humor and brilliance that can come from it. Don't give me some story about some characters who are all magically in love with this pterodactyl for no reason that's ever really provided. Like, and don't give me, there we go, I'm kicking my laptop, I'm that angry. And don't give me characters who are so one-dimensional and boring that I don't care what happens to them. I got to a point where the kid got savaged by this pterodactyl. I didn't care. The characters were massively in love with this pterodactyl and then randomly started taking up running and wearing certain coloured trainers to placate it or to keep it happy, and that worked. And then I'm speechless. There we go. So I'm going to stop for my own health and sanity and for the enjoyment of you as an audience. But enjoyment maybe being difficult there. Sorry, I've literally just rambled about how terrible this book is for a while. I hate savaging writers, particularly as sort of an aspiring writer myself. I feel like it's kind of unfair in some ways, but I also feel like this needed to be said. And I'm glad I said it. Anyway, that has been me reviewing The Hot Pterodactyl Boyfriend by Alan Cumyn, so you don't have to. If you know of any other books that are this silly and bad on purpose, but get the job done and are successful as a result, please do let me know. If you just want to type quotes from the room in the comments, please also be my guest. That would make me very happy, and that would help cleanse my mind of this book that I started 2021 with. What a year, and we're only in January. Anyway, take care. I've been Bob the Bookerer. This is all silly and, you know, meant as kind of a joke in some ways. I don't really hate Alan Cumyn. Maybe his other books are great. I don't know. This just didn't work for me. And you've been warned. There we go. Anyway, take care. I've been Bob the Bookerer, and have a wonderful time and enjoy your reading. Bye bye.